ties are often described as everything. We're supposed to have this unbreakable bond tied together by love, loyalty, connection, and blood. But what happens when those ties break? And what causes estranged parents and adult children, people who once shared everything and were everything to each other, to drift so far apart that reconnection feels and may outrightly be impossible? Today I'm going to be exploring 6 of the most common and overlooked reasons that estrangement happens. They're not what a lot of people think they are either. There's a lot of speculation and theories floating around out there about what causes estrangement. Some have merit, some are contributors but not the root causes, and others completely miss the mark. I'm not here to point any fingers of blame at anyone. My purpose is to help educate and to shed light on the complexities of these relationships, and perhaps offer a path towards clarity and healing, maybe even closure. Let's dive in. Hands down, without any question whatsoever, the number one driver of estrangement is unresolved trauma. This is true regardless of who instigated the estrangement, too. It could be parents or it could be adult kids. I have a little secret here. Trauma doesn't always look like what we expect trauma to be. It's not always physical violence or neglect or those really big things. In fact, the most sinister and long-lasting stuff happens within the context of relationships. Some examples of what that could look like include verbal, emotional, and psychological abuse, bullying or gaslighting, frequent criticism, or kids witnessing verbal or domestic abuse between adults. It could also be kids experiencing a different public persona of their parent than they see at home. It's all sunshine and roses when everybody else is looking, but a completely different story behind closed doors. Divorce is another big one, and a tricky one too, that can create trauma both because it happens and also if mom stays too long for the kids, but is really at the detriment of the kids. Another source of unresolved trauma that often goes overlooked is the trauma that parents carry with them themselves from their own childhoods or bad relationships or whatever else they've been through in life. No matter how much we try to ignore that stuff, it will manifest itself in the relationships with our kids, and it will always make a mess too. It's also the stuff that stays hidden that causes problems. If a parent or a grandparent or another trusted person was emotionally, physically, or sexually abusive during someone's childhood, that now adult child may choose to distance themselves to protect their mental and emotional well-being, and maybe even their own kids. It doesn't matter which parent it was. It doesn't matter who it was. If something happened and their trusted or other parent didn't stop it, didn't believe it, didn't protect them from it, it's going to carry the same punch as if they were the abusers themselves. And a lot of people don't realize that. Maybe they're like, that's not even fair. But from the child's perspective, who are now grown-ups, that abuse was very real and they were alone in it. And that feels awful. Even if the abuse happened in the past, even way in the past, if it's unresolved, it can still create significant barriers to reconciliation and to connection, especially if the parent was involved somehow and doesn't acknowledge it or take accountability for what happened, or worse, they try to justify it or minimize it. Until that trauma, whatever it is recognized and resolved by both parties, both people are going to keep tripping over it, reacting to old stuff, and it will drive negative, toxic behaviors on both sides. The second big driver is substance abuse, addiction, and mental illness. That could be coming from the parents or the kids are in the line of fire, even if it's unintentional. Or it can also be directed at parents by young adults who are now doing this and taking their issues out on their parents. It's not okay either way. Do you want to know another little secret? Unresolved trauma is the leading driver of substance abuse, addiction, mental health problems, and abuse. Why? Because hurt people hurt other people. And the cycles continue through the generations until someone finally stands up and says, no more. This stops with me. And if that means I have to back away and leave you forever or for a season until I can make this stop, that is what is going to happen. Because until those cycles are broken, the substance abuse, the addiction, and the mental health issues that follow them are often attempts to self-medicate and to make the pain go away because they don't know how to do it in any other way. But it also often drives abuse that is physically and emotionally harmful to themselves and also to the people closest to them. So it's a real mess. The number 3 big driver is that someone in a position of attachment authority, meaning a trusted person that's in a connected relationship, turns your kids against you. It's a sucky situation, but it happens a lot. It might be your ex, a grandparent, their own spouse, your daughter-in-law, your son-in-law, maybe even a friend. But for whatever reasons they had, and I guarantee those reasons were there to serve themselves, they told a good story to get what they wanted for themselves, and your offspring believed them, and now they have a very distorted view of you. It's one of the most awful forms of manipulation because you can't defend yourself against it, even if what they said is not true. Because the harder you try to fight against it, the harder they're going to fight back. And you will inadvertently show them that whatever they've heard about you that you don't know about is true. And it makes things so much worse. The only way to prove it's not true is to back off, let it be, and live your life in such a way that when they're ready, they can see that it's not true. Number 4 is a big one. It's that the relationship with you doesn't feel safe for your now adult offspring. There are so many reasons this can happen. Lack of boundaries, unrealistic expectations, toxic dynamics, lack of recognition of the problems, or lack of accountability on the part of the parents. There are so many reasons that can drive this. And your kids may or may not ever outright tell you that this is a contributing factor because it doesn't feel safe enough for them to do so. They know it will just end in chaos and drama, and they've already learned it's easier to keep their mouth shut. I will give you a little hint though. Those first 3 things I just shared will absolutely make a relationship feel unsafe. But honestly, the details of what happened don't always really matter. It's not the problems that are the main problem. It's the lack of recognition and accountability and remorse that cause the most problems, especially if they come to you with them and are met with defensiveness, attempts at justification, emotional immaturity, or other kinds of crazy behavior that just fan the flames. They'll likely also pick up very quickly if someone is changing the details of what happened to make it suit their own agenda, or if they believe that their parent is more concerned about being right than having a safe, connected, mutually beneficial, and enjoyable relationship with their own children. Long story short is if your kids don't feel safe having a relationship with you, or if there's too much drama, or if they believe that you're not a safe person to be around, they will leave and they'll probably take their kids with them. Like most everything, this does get to be a two-way street. If adult kids are making choices and engaging in risky, abusive, or chaotic behavior, you as a parent have a right to protect your own peace and enforce boundaries that create distance. Hopefully that's not a permanent thing, but for sure it is until the trust is restored and it's safe for both parties to engage with each other again. Reason number 5 is that there are differing values or beliefs. Clashing political agendas, religious beliefs, or social values can create some serious tension, especially if one side is willing to accept that there is a difference and respect that they have a right to have their own opinions and be different. This can be a tough one too. If our kids reject moral standards and values and choose to live differently than they were raised, they'll likely put up a fight and demand unconditional acceptance so that they can do whatever they want. And then they'll flip things around and play the victim if they don't get it. This can be extremely maddening to us as parents, but it's important to remember that this behavior is often driven both by defiance and also by shame. They know what they're doing isn't right. They know that you don't approve of it, and they're going to do it anyway, just because they can. This can feel insurmountable and even terrifying to parents who can often see further than our newly young adult kids, and we can often see where their choices will lead long before they can. I learned the hard way, we can't control this. We have to let them go. We have to let them do it. They're going to have to learn just like we did, and some of them are going to insist on doing it the hard way. That doesn't mean that you need to abandon your beliefs or standards or back off on your values in order to meet theirs. In fact, that's one of the worst things you can do, actually. We've got to learn to love them in spite of themselves and find safer ways to connect, or to let them go and do their thing while we do ours, and then just be there in case they fall. Big reason number 6 is that they simply need to break away from their parents to gain their independence and to come into their own as adults. They're craving and needing the freedom to figure out life on their own and to learn how to live in this adult world and to make it on their own without their family being involved in everything. A lot of times we'll hear them say they feel smothered, or that we were helicopter parents, when really all we were doing is trying to keep them safe. And we might have forgot to notice that they're not little kids anymore. One thing is for sure, though, that parents who meddle in their children's marriages or partnerships can cause major tension, especially if they criticize that partner or they create loyalty conflicts. In other words, you can like her, but you can't like us. Or you can do that, but you don't get to be with us. All that will likely do is cause the adult child to run straight to them and to prioritize their own adult relationships over the parent-child relationship. Because whether we like it or not, and whether we like them or not, they get to choose their own partners. We don't. And they also have to live with the consequences of that. And we don't. A big part of this need to break away that I have heard both from parents and kids is entitlement. This can cause major clashes. It seems the new cultural norm is that the kids feel like they have the right to be vicious and get whatever they want at any cost, and anyone who doesn't do what they want is going to be accused of being horrible or toxic or whatever it is they want to call us. And this can leave parents feeling very attacked, vulnerable, and used. The long and the short of it is, estrangement between parents and adult children is never simple, and it's rarely only one person's fault either. The reasons are often varied and complex, and there's usually more than one of them too. And though it might look like there was a single event that caused it, it's actually often tied to years of unresolved hurt, unmet expectations, or patterns of dysfunction that we may or may not have even known are there, or how harmful they actually are. But while estrangement can feel like it's final, it doesn't have to define the rest of your story. Understanding the reasons behind the distance is a powerful first step, because it allows you to reflect on the dynamics at play, to recognize the underlying pain, and to consider what might be needed for healing, both for yourself and for your kids, whether that's time, accountability, healthier boundaries, or simply the courage to let go. In some cases, reconciliation might be possible through open communication, empathy, and a lot of mutual effort. But for others, maintaining distance may be the healthiest choice, at least for now, and unfortunately, maybe forever. That isn't something we always have control over. But either way, the goal is to move forward in a way that honors your emotional well-being and fosters growth. Regardless of where you're at, give yourself permission to let it be whatever it is, and put a willingness there on your own part to do your part. There's no right way to get there. It's going to look different for everyone. But if you'd like some support in making it happen, because it is a pretty complicated process, let's talk. I'd be happy to help. It's what I do. No matter where you are in the process, please know that you're not alone, and that clarity, peace, and hope are always within reach. That's all I've got for now. I'll see you next time. Bye.